This section is very clearly all about Spain and mostly about one person, but before we can get to Philip, we got to talk about his daddy, Charles I, who is also Charles V. They are the same person. But your mommy at home, her job is mommy, and that's what she's called. But when she goes to work, her job is nurse, and that's her name at work. So it's same person, different jobs, different names associated with the different jobs. Okay? He is Charles I when he is governing Spain. He is Charles V when he is governing the Holy Roman Empire. Here he is as a handsome young Habsburg monarch. He is a Habsburg monarch. That's a German line. We know he's Habsburg because we have his family tree, but we would know that if we just looked at this picture. Because the Habsburgs have a very interesting genetic tendency to a protuberous chin. Bit of an underbite as well. A few hundred years from now in Austria, there's going to be a Habsburg emperor who's going to have such a significant chin and underbite that he won't be able to chew food normally. It will all have to be mushed up for him in order to eat. This is definitely, the fact that it gets more exaggerated over time is definitely a result of the fact that royalty will only marry royalty, and there's only so many bloodlines, and eventually you're marrying someone who is a descendant of someone who is, of whom you are also a descendant. So the family tree's branches cross from time to time. So a young man, king of Spain, and as an older gentleman, the Holy Roman Emperor. He's Charles V then. He can afford a little better portrait artist who makes not quite such a big deal out of his chin. Also, the use of a beard and the Van Dyke collar, which was in style at that day, makes it not quite so obvious. The crown he's wearing in this drawing is the crown of the Holy Roman Emperor, which we know is neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, right? It's an elected position. It acts more like a confederacy than anything else. Just because Charles I becomes Charles V as Holy Roman Emperor does not mean that Spain gets absorbed into the Holy Roman Empire. They are separate entities. If I own a home here, and then I own a cabin in the woods in Minnesota, my home here is still a separate entity from the cabin in the woods in Minnesota. If I put new carpet in my home here, and then the next weekend I go on up to Minnesota to the cabin, it won't magically also have new carpet. Separate things governed separately. Okay? Some folks earlier today had a little difficulty understanding that. Are you guys good with it? Okay. All right. Charles is the grandson of our friends Ferdinand and Isabella on one side. On the other side, Grandpa was a Habsburg, and that's where he gets the chin and the Holy Roman Emperor title. Okay. When Grandpa Habsburg dies, along with the Holy Roman Emperor, he gets the Netherlands as well. That's going to be significant for his son. Okay. Charles V is going to tire of all of these duties of governing Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. And he's going to make a decision to abdicate. What does it mean to abdicate? Matt?
Basically give up the position.
Give up the position. It is a fancier, kind of nicer way of saying Charles V was a quitter. Yeah. You go to your coach and you say, Coach, I can't take this anymore. I abdicate. It sounds a whole lot better than saying I quit. Yes, Jason?
So it's just like resigning?
It is a lot like resigning, yes. Except it's a word that we use with the throne when you're choosing to walk away from it. Yes. So what you're looking at here on this map, in the green areas, are the areas that were the Holy Roman Empire and Charles's holdings as King of Spain, minus the stuff that's not in Europe. So here we've got Spain. We've got the Kingdom of Naples, which includes Sicily and Sardinia. We've got a little bit up here in the Tyrol, which is Austria. Bohemia, which would be the Czech Republic today, over here in Transylvania, which is Romania. A little bit down here in the Balkans, which would be Slovenia. You've got the Netherlands, some of what's along the Swiss-French border now, the French, Italian, Austrian border there. And then what's not on the map over here to the west is the Americas, New Spain, and then right over here, specific Spanish territory over here way to the east, Philippines. Good. All right. So this is what Philip is walking away from, or I'm sorry, what Charles is walking away from when he chooses to abdicate the throne. That's a whole lot of territory. When he walks away, he divides the empire. He decides that this was too much for him. He'd ruled it for 37 years. And he doesn't want to put this much on any other person, so he divides it. Takes his brother Ferdinand and he gives him the Holy Roman Empire. To his son, Philip II of Spain, he gives him Spain, the New World colonies, the Netherlands, the Kingdom of Naples here in southern Italy, and the islands that are named after him, the Philippines. Remember, Philip has one L, so do the Philippines. So all of this other stuff up in mainland Europe goes to Charles's brother, Ferdinand. Okay. So why does Charles abdicate? Yes, it's a lot of territory to govern. You're putting out fires all over the place. It had been 37 years. He's old. He's tired. He was particularly affected by the siege of Vienna in 1529. The Ottomans, and you can see them here along the bottom edge of the painting, lay siege to Vienna. Today, Vienna is the capital of Austria. Then it is a major city in the Holy Roman Empire. This is the deepest that the Ottoman Empire penetrated into Europe. Vienna, right about here on the map. The Ottomans, all here. Here's Greece. Here's Turkey today. This is a long ways into Europe, right? Charles is what religion? He's Catholic. And here we have the Ottoman infidels laying siege to this capital in the heart of Europe. After a long time, the siege is broken, the Ottomans are pushed back. But it took a toll on Charles fighting this off. He had been fighting Protestantism. He's ruling at the height of the Protestant Reformation. He's been fighting the Ottomans on sea and on land. He's worn out. And so he abdicates and goes to live in a monastery where it's nice and quiet and peaceful. Little historical tidbit for you. When the siege of Vienna was finally lifted, a baker in Vienna thought that this was cause for celebration. He wanted to bake up a fancy new treat that no one had ever had. So he created a multi-layered, very light and fluffy and flaky pastry to celebrate. And he called it a croissant. And he was mocking the Ottoman flag and symbol of Islam, the crescent. was on their flag. That's terrible drawing, but so for those of you who think that the croissant is French, wrong. Siege of Vienna, 1529. It's an Austrian pastry. So there you go. Thank you, Ottomans, for bringing us the croissant in a way. Might not have had it if they hadn't laid siege to Vienna. So, silver lining, right? Or not. Okay. I want to point out something else to you with the Ottoman siege of Vienna. Up here, Vienna, Ottomans down here. They have conquered and occupied all of this territory all the way up. Right here, opposite Italy, is an area in Europe called the Balkans. It's a place occupied by countries like Macedonia, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Have you heard any of those names? Troubled, turmoil, right? A lot of fighting amongst the people. And part of that goes back to this time period. Because a conquering army and a conquering people can't live somewhere without leaving some of their culture behind. And the Ottomans, by having occupied this territory for so long, left behind their religion. And so here you have people who are Eastern Orthodox, who are Catholic, who are Muslim, living side by side by side. And it is out of those religious and a lot of ethnic differences, because this is a very mountainous region, and so territorially very subdivided up. A lot of turmoil in this area. It is the area out of which World War I will be sparked. At that time, it's called the powder keg of Europe. Do you remember hearing your teacher say that last year? That's the Balkans. And that introduction of Islam as a result of the Ottoman occupation for so many years contributes to that tremendously. Okay? That is significant. Alrighty. So let's go on to little Phil. Handsome fella. Handsome fella. Got that Habsburg chin going on though, doesn't he? Fourth hour was pretty convinced he looked like a potato. I don't know. Philip the potato. I don't know. He's got two eyes. Philip. And then he's got two more. By the way, a reminder for you, Roman numerals only when we have a first or a fifth or a second. None of that 2 in the ND stuff. 2 eyes. Okay. Philip II. King of Spain, the New World, the Philippines, the Spanish Netherlands, the Kingdom of Naples. He is Catholic. But Philip, he's a special guy. He's a little more than just your ordinary run-of-the-mill Catholic. Philip II is Catholic. I mean, he is Catholic. Like, you can't spell Catholic without Philip II. Okay, I know that makes no sense, but he is uber Catholic, right? The man attends full Mass every day, sometimes twice a day. Catholics in the house, how long is a full Mass today? About an hour. That's been shortened, folks. Easily 2 hours back then. He's got all that territory to govern, and every day. Now, he thinks of himself as a divine right, absolute monarch. He's been chosen by God to rule this country, and by God, he's going to rule this country. Nobody tells him what to do. He listens to the Pope, but the Pope is God's representative on earth. And the Pope doesn't tell him what to do. He reminds him of his religious obligations, which Philip is always keen to partake because he is uber Catholic, right? Now, Philip thought himself a divine right absolute monarch. Except Spain is weird as a nation. It's not one country unified like a France or the United Kingdom, or Great Britain rather. It's more of a loose confederation. You have Navarre, you have Catalonia, you have Castile. And he's inherited one of those thrones down the bloodline from Ferdinand and Isabella, right? And he's holding the rest of it together. And the representatives of those territories get some say in what gets done. And so there's a little conflict there, because he's thinking, I'm the boss, it's all me. And they're thinking, you're only the boss because we let you be. And there's conflict there. All right. Part of your job as a divine right, absolute monarch, is convincing everyone else that you are as big of a deal as you think you are. Does that make sense? You have to act the part. And for Philip, part of acting that part is creating for himself a magnificent, impressive palace that when looked upon, everyone has to say, oh my gosh, this has to be the home of an all-powerful monarch. Kind of think Wizard of Oz, right? The great and powerful Oz. Philip builds himself that palace, El Escorial. It's on a hilltop, a ways outside of what today is the capital of Spain, Madrid. At the time that Philip was building this, the capital of Spain was further south in Valladolid. And I'm probably saying that wrong because I never took Spanish, but what, other than the fantastic symmetry and the magnificent size of this palace, what is one of the largest features of this palace? Jason? Well, that's not a wall around it. That is part of the palace. 5 stories tall. Joe? The dome. What is the dome part of? A cathedral. There is a full-size cathedral integrated into this palace. Here's the bell towers. Here's the pattern of the cross on which the cathedral is built. This is not a little royal chapel. When we look later this week at the Palace of Versailles that will be built in France, King Louis builds himself a royal chapel. Now, we could probably hold a pep rally in Louis's royal chapel. This is a full-on cathedral. We could get the whole town of Papillion in here. Okay? Does this emphasize anything for you about Philip II? How about that he's uber Catholic? Between 1/4 and 1/3 of the square footage of this magnificent palace is a cathedral. The dude is making a statement here. Okay? I am all powerful. Look at how big my palace is. Now, in this palace, his rooms look more like the cell of a monk in a monastery. Almost barren of decoration, a couple of solid wooden chairs, a table, and a bed. None of the opulence that we associate with many other monarchs. This, again, comes from him being uber Catholic. All right. Now, by being uber Catholic, Philip is also obligated, like his father, who was also pretty doggone Catholic, to carry on the fight against the Ottoman Turks. And he successfully does so at the Battle of Lepanto. I want to say like 1571 or something. This happens Uh, east of Greece, it is at that point the largest naval battle ever fought, most number of ships and combatants engaged. Who wins? Spain wins. Spain wins, which says to Philip what? When Spain wins this epic naval battle, what message does that send to Philip in his mind? You're doing stuff right, because who made sure that the Spanish won? God. God hates the Ottoman Turks too, so of course Spain is going to win. The Ottoman Turks are going to hell. How could they possibly be allowed to defeat the Spaniards? The Battle of Lepanto is a turning point in the Mediterranean. The Ottomans are not going to be a thorn in the side in the Mediterranean Sea anymore after the Battle of Lepanto. The Spaniards are going to pretty much control things. Okay? Lest you be thinking, well, I thought the Mediterranean was controlled by the Italians. Remember, Italy doesn't exist. And the Kingdom of Naples, which is all of southern Italy, is part of Spain. So Spain is controlling the Mediterranean at this point. They're controlling that trade. Okay, question for you. How did dear Philip build this? What? Magic? Yeah, no. No, he's uber Catholic. He's not going to believe in magic. How did he build it? Put it on his MasterCard? I'm not asking for the engineering of how he built this.
Trade the supplies.
Where did he get the money to buy the supplies to build it? Not slave labor. The colonies. He's sucking that gold and silver out of New Spain. And that is paying for the fleet which defeated the Ottomans at the Battle of Lepanto. It is paying for El Escorial. Now, lest you think that Spain is fantastically wealthy during this time, well, you're right and you're wrong. During Philip's reign, Spain declares bankruptcy at least 5 times, even though they are fantastically wealthy. Because Spain keeps borrowing money to buy the things that it needs, because the money that comes back from the new colonies is the king's. And because he is an absolute ruler, nobody can make him pay off the debts. So he just lets the country go bankrupt, continues building his magnificent palace, whatever, right? Now, financially, there's other things going on in Spain. When that money comes into your pocket, what do you tend to do with it? You ever heard the phrase, I got a $20 bill burning a hole in my pocket? What do you tend to do when you have money in hand? Spend it. And if everybody has money in hand and they all go out and spend it, what happens? It's called inflation. Prices go up. Prices go up. All of that new money coming from the New World drives prices up in Spain. Now, Philip liked to keep things old school. So he is sticking with the guild system. He hasn't adapted to that putting out system, or what's more commonly called the cottage system, where more people get involved in the trades. So Spain's ability to produce finished goods or manufactured goods is still very small. So when Spain needs things like windows for a magnificent castle, or fixtures, or furniture, or guns, or cannons, where does it get those things? It has to trade, and it trades with other European countries. Now, what do we know equals power? And Spain is getting all of this gold and silver for the New World. So Spain could and should be one of the most powerful countries in Europe, right? Except that to get the things to keep the power, like guns and muskets and cannons, Spain is having to trade away its money and is thus trading away its power. And it is enriching its future enemies. Consider that for a second. One of Spain's biggest trading partners is the Netherlands. We'll come back to that. So just because you got a lot of money doesn't mean you're going to keep it. Okay? There was a fundamental flaw in Spain's economy. Okay? Okay, so those Netherlands, by golly. Where did the Reformation begin? It's only been 2 chapters, guys. Where did the Reformation begin? Not in Flanders. Who began the Reformation? Who? Luther. Where was Luther from? Germany. Thank you. So where did this Protestant Reformation begin? Very good. Now, because of Spain, or because of trade, it spread almost immediately to Flanders, which is in the Netherlands. Okay, good. So we got that settled. So, Protestant Reformation spread to Flanders. We have who on the throne in Spain? Philip II, who, by controlling Spain, also controls the Netherlands. Philip has been on a rampage to eradicate all infidels from Spain. That would be the Muslims in Spain called the Moors, and the Jews. Ugh. There aren't very many Protestants in Spain. They've had a really hard time getting a foothold in Spain. But yeah, definitely the Protestants, or the Jews and the Muslims. To do that, Philip instigated a program called the Inquisition. It's actually a papal program that Philip was like, oh yeah, we can do this. It involves torture to get confessions, torture to force you to accept Catholicism, torture to get you to name other people who are going to be damned eternally to hell because they aren't Catholics, so that they in turn can be tortured into becoming Catholic before you kill them. Because once they've accepted Catholicism, you need to kill them because they might change their minds later and then you've lost that soul. And the whole goal is to get as many souls for Catholicism as you can. If they won't accept Catholicism, then you burn them at the stake. It's a fantastic system. Truly, it gets the Jews and the Muslims out of Spain. If they don't get swallowed up by the Inquisition, they pack up and go. Okay? Not a pleasant place to hang out. So Philip says, I know, these doggone Protestants in the Netherlands, they gotta go. They gotta go. Because Philip is what kind of Catholic? Uber Catholic. Okay? Philip cannot tolerate the Netherlands being a home for Protestantism.
He said that we can get the van anytime on Friday. What time do you want? Since there's no school.
3:30. Excellent, thank you. So Philip says, let's send the Inquisition to the Netherlands. And he starts rounding up those Protestants in the Netherlands. Now remember, Protestantism has existed in the Netherlands since almost the beginning of the Reformation. So how do those Protestants take the introduction of the Inquisition? Not well. They weren't out helping to gather kindling for the anti-Catholic bonfires, as it were. They say, oh no you didn't. And they say, we're out of here. We declare independence. And word of this gets back to Philip. And Philip, at the very beginning of his reign, had actually lived in the Netherlands. He liked the Netherlands. He didn't want to see bad things happen there. He says, they said, what? Go get 'em, boys. And he beefs up the Inquisition and he sends his biggest army to the Netherlands. Because by golly, if we can't persuade them, if we can't torture them, we'll subdue them into worshiping God our way. Remember, by being uber Catholic, Philip has an obligation to save these souls. If he doesn't do everything in his power, he isn't being a good Catholic. And if they aren't Catholic, they're lost souls. So that is why, folks, like the video told you, when Philip sends the Spanish Armada, they had to sail past Plymouth, where they had the whole English fleet caught by the wind and the tide. Remember that from the video? The wind and the tide blowing in. The whole English fleet sitting at anchor in harbor. And Philip's fleet has to go, because they have to sail past up here to the Netherlands to pick up the army, which is fighting these Protestants, so that they can shuttle them back over here to fight those Protestants. Had the army been at home in Spain and aboard the fleet, you might be speaking Spanish. Because England's land army, had the English fleet been defeated, England's land army was nowhere near the size of Philip's. Could have been a totally different outcome. Now, have I adequately convinced you of the uber-Catholic nature of Philip II? Need I remind you that he actually went so far as to marry Mary Tudor, member of the stink breath? And he not only wed but bed her? And then the guy has the huge Catholic cojones to propose to her Protestant half-sister. It wasn't that he just wanted to date a ginger. He was trying to save all of those English souls. And what gave him permission to send this armada? The Pope excommunicated Elizabeth, and by doing so, all of her subjects. And so Philip was then obligated as a Catholic. It had nothing, I assure you, nothing to do, wink, with him wanting to combine his empire with another large European empire. He was out to save all those souls. Okay? Uber Catholic. All right, Spain's golden age. This whole 100-year period from Charles to Philip. All this wealth coming in. What did wealth generated by trade give us during the Renaissance? Patrons of the arts, right? We get that in Spain as well. Miguel Cervantes writes a fantastic novel, one of the first ever written, called Don Quixote de la Mancha. Don Quixote, a little soft in the head. He and his sidekick, by the name of Pancho Sanza. Don Quixote lives in a fantasy world. He envisions himself a knight riding a noble steed. It's actually a mule. Okay. He has like a strainer or pot on his head. Okay. And he goes about fighting dragons in the Spanish countryside. These dragons are actually windmills. Guys, windmills were a fantastic way to get your water up out of the ground. If someone ever says to you, don't go jousting at windmills, they are making a reference to Don Quixote, because he would get charged up with his pike on his donkey and go charging at a windmill, thinking it a dragon, and he was going to slay that dragon. And what would happen? The windmill, spinning around, would go whoop, flip him off his donkey, and he'd have his bell rung laying there on the ground. Pancho Sanza's like, you okay? You okay, man? Come on, wake up, wake up. So don't go jousting at windmills. Someone is saying, you're picking a fight you can't win. Okay? El Greco, fantastic Spanish artist who's not Spanish. El Greco means the Greek. You do not have to know him by his Greek name. Whew, right? Big sigh of relief, and there was much rejoicing. You just need to know him as El Greco. Okay? Questions? What did I not cover that you need to know about?
Who wrote the Don Quixote?
Miguel Cervantes. Cervantes.
What did he write?
Don Quixote. I can't get to the Quixote. Quixote. Quixotic comes from Quixote. It means to live in kind of fantasy la la land.
Alright.
What else? You guys think you're going to rock the quiz tomorrow? It's relatively short. Nothing compared to what we're going to get next week after we spend 2 whole days on France. You definitely don't want to walk in here without having your 4-2 notes done on Wednesday. I promise you. All right. Stopping the recording.